gosh. Good golly gosh. How long has it been, everyone? I think we missed exactly one Friday, but we're back. Sorry I'm late this week. I slept like a fucking angel last night. It was so wonderful. I had friends over. We got we got a seafood boil bucket at a local like Cajun restaurant. That was much more difficult to eat than I thought it was going to be, but that's okay. I made everyone vodka sodas. I had exactly 2 puffs on a blunt. You're supposed to eat the seafood, not the bucket? Oh, that's crazy, bro. 3 puffs would just be uncouth. That's kind of how I felt last night. I was like, I don't want to... I just want, like, 1 drink. Just 2 puffs. That's it. It was exactly what I wanted. What's the numerological significance of the second puff? Well, it's the Bithos, right? It's the, it is the inevitable other which God has to create by condition of his transcendence. 1 drink, 2 puffs, 3 berries, a beautiful night of sleep. Eating sushi off Jame. Poorly. Like it hurts. 2 of them. I slept in today. It was so nice. So nice. So needed. I took yesterday off meds, just to recover from how fucking busy I've been recently. I feel so. Oh my god, my voice broke. Yeah, guys, I feel fucking. I'm stressed a lot because of my job. Even though it doesn't feel like real work. Because it's like, okay, I can't really work without my meds. For a while, I was kind of weaning off of them, but then I was just like, wait, I'm taking a very low dose every day. Like, why not just, like, up the dose and just be a little more productive? Which is fine. Like, it's good. I am more productive now, but it's like, I do need to more strictly observe my, like, minimum 1 day a week off rule, because it prevents me from resting properly. And then shit happens in my life where it's like, oh, I need to be, like, you know, I have, like, an important call with, like, my medical insurance provider that I need to be on meds for. So I can't, like, even though I'm not doing any fucking work, I need to still be on meds, and that's not restful, and then that builds up, and if I don't, like, have at least 1 nice day a week where I just don't do fucking anything, I'll fucking burn out, and I won't be able to work. There was a period where there was a day earlier this week where I tried to watch an interesting YouTube video just on a thing I wanted to learn about for work, and it gave me a splitting headache. Like, that, just watching a fun YouTube video was way too much mental stimulation for me. Ugh. Yeah, I guess I need to take care of myself like a fucking putz. I'm so glad I haven't noticed a sleep change from my stimulants. Well, even before I was on stimulants, I've had, like, chronic lifelong insomnia. And that's only recently been fixed by basically just, like, going on trazodone, which has been a fucking godsend. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and enemies, I fucking love my sleeping meds. It's the first night I got genuinely good sleep with trazodone. I felt like I had gotten my first good night of sleep of my entire life. Like, something that I had only grazed against previously. It was like, oh my god, this is what it's supposed to feel like? Is this what everyone feels like every single night? That shit was incredible. Between that and your PCP just described trazodone. Between that and a new mattress topper, sleep has been amazing. It's so good. It's so... You take your stimulants way too late in the morning. Okay, I was put on... a friend of mine who is not a doctor, but is a pharmacy technician, recommended that I take a magnesium complex in the morning along with my meds. And that has also been a game changer. Like, if I take magnesium and my meds and I'm still tired in the mornings, that's a sign that I really need a day off. Oh, man. Wool mattress. Magnesium complex. I find it quite simple. Oh my god, speaking of breaking the... What's a magnesium complex? It's like, basically a supplement for dietary magnesium, which is usually... Like, a lot of modern farming techniques strip the magnesium out of like, the fruits and vegetables that we eat, so a lot of people need to be taking a magnesium complex. I'm one of them. And it basically... Magnesium is depleted when your body produces, like, serotonin, and it's an essential component in all of the hormones that make you sleep. So it's pretty important for me to have. And the anti-androgens that I've been on also leach magnesium out of my body. So I was probably running on, like, you know, there was a tiny little grain of magnesium in my entire body that everyone was having to swap back and forth like a post office on a crunch scheduling. Yeah, literally, you must become a magnesium-based life form. Yeah, Spiro depletes magnesium heavy, dog. It is a devil drug. It's a fucking evil devil drug. Do not go on Spiro. Oh my god. But speaking of breaking the bank, I've been getting, I finally saved up enough to get, what the fuck is it called? Electrolysis on my face, which has been very nice. It makes my face very puffy for a couple days. A large part of my chin is currently quite puffy at the moment. But, you know, I'm going to an electrolysis expert in Beverly Hills, and she's like a 68-year-old Mexican woman. There is no person on earth that I would trust more to do electrolysis on me. I trust her with my life. She's so sweet too. Like, she told a story today that was clearly her trying to, like, it was clearly her trying to, like, say that she's cool with trans people by telling me a story. She was like, when I was in electrolysis, how many sessions have you signed up for? I've done my second session. It'll probably take me like 8 more. Like, doing my whole face is probably gonna cost like $1,000 to $2,000, but it's like, this is, for the longest time, my facial hair has always been like my biggest source of gender dysphoria. So, fucking anything that gets rid of it, like the idea of never having to shave my fucking face ever again is making me so elated. No, and it's like I have very thick, luscious Eastern European hair, so shaving is fucking hell for me. It sucks. I hate that. And so I'm finally removing this bullshit from my face, so I don't have to ever deal with it ever again. It is worth every fucking penny, even though parking is $20 fucking because it's in the middle of fucking Beverly Hills. But whatever. Okay. So my electrolysis person was telling me the story. She was like, when I was in electrolysis school, there was a woman named Debbie in my class, and she was the class clown. And the teacher asked us, why do you want to get into electrolysis? And Debbie said, well, when I was younger, my aunt got very sick, and I went to visit her in the hospital, and it was just me and my aunt. And I realized that I did not have an aunt. I actually had an uncle. And so what I did was I went down to the she had a full beard. And so what I did was I went down to the pharmacy of the hospital, and I got some tweezers, and every day I would come visit my aunt, and I would pluck out her beard hairs. And I realized that electrolysis could really help people, and that is why I do it. I was like, you are such a fucking real one. For like this, it's clearly like this is like an almost 70-year-old Mexican woman being like, I can tell that you're trans, and I think that's cool, which was so nice of her. Like I felt that was so touching. You can do that. You can remove all your facial hair. Yeah. It's so it's so fun. It's so sweet. It is. It's really sweet. Also, like, talk about like legends of niece and nephew. That niece being like, yeah, let me tweeze out your beard hairs every single day. Like, what a real one. You can just do that. You can remove all your facial hair. Yeah. Basically, the way electrolysis works is they take a tiny electrified needle and they shove it into each individual follicle, and they burn out the root of the hair and then tweeze out the hair, and then use the electrified needle to cauterize the wound shut. And I will say it's less painful than getting a tattoo. Like there are parts of electrolysis, like they numb your face before that. There are parts of electrolysis that I could have easily I could have easily fallen asleep while doing this. Is my music still playing? Where's the music? Hold up. There it is. The music is still playing? Okay, good. No, and so it takes a long time. It's like so okay, and one session is about twice as expensive as getting laser, but it's permanent. It's permanent. A section of your face that gets electrolysis will literally never grow hair again. Because, like, okay, electrolysis laser lasts a long time, but, you know, 10 years down the road, you're going to have to do laser on your whole face again. It's not the same with electrolysis. Electrolysis is truly permanent, which is why I'm doing it. Because the idea of never growing facial hair again is fucking incredible to me. I love that shit. We've been doing my chin. Like, it takes an hour to do, like, maybe a postage stamp sized patch of hair. Like, it is a slow process. The parts on my chin are a lot like the parts on my chin are a lot easier. The upper lip is going to fucking suck. That is not going to be fun at all. Although like, even the parts of it that have been slightly painful have been less painful than getting a tattoo. Kind of wanted to do back and chest, but that would take forever. That would take forever. Like, doing just my facial hair is going to cost me, like, it's basically going to be like 10 sessions and about $2,000 on the high end. So it is not a cheap process, but I've been saving up for literally years to do this. And it's like, most of it doesn't really hurt. I can see, like, bikini line hurting a lot. That would not be pleasant. Upper lip is not going to be fun, but I'm brave. I'm brave and kind. Doing electrolysis sounds hard as fuck. Tweezing someone's beard, but you're also doing a little hat trick while you're at it. Yeah, it's like a two-handed process. Like, my electrolysis expert has, like, both wrists, like, braced against my skull while she's doing it. And she's an expert. Like, she's clearly really fast at this. She's clearly, like, really good at doing this. But it's, like, individually burning out every hair root and then tweezing it out. Like, it is kind of a hat trick. You're right. Oh, man. But I'm excited. I'm excited. It also, like, your face looks wild after you get it. Like, the drive down to Beverly Hills every fucking couple weeks is annoying. and crowded, and it kind of sucks. But, I don't really want to take the bus back, because, like, sitting for, like, a fucking hour and a half on an LA bus with my face all weird and swollen does not sound fun. I feel like in the grand scheme of hurting, electrolysis one time is better than waxing 5 billion times. Yeah, it's like net negative pain. How long unshaved do you need to be before the appointment? Ooh, I'd say give it, like, minimum 2 days. Like, minimum 2 days. But also it depends on your hair. Okay, well, May, yeah, you say oof, but here's the thing. My hair is so thick and curly that if I can't shave every 2 days. Like, if I shave more than 2 days, I will give myself razor burn. Like, which is part of why I'm fucking doing this. I wish I could search the internet for electrolysis, electrophoresis, dialysis without getting medical stuff and doing biochemistry there. Disnag, I found my bitch by going, I looked up electrolysis LA Reddit, and then the top result was from a subreddit called Hot Girls LA. That's, like, I trust someone posting on Hot Girls LA. Like, she had a couple recommendations. I picked one of those. Like, you gotta look for Reddit, you know? Like, I found a Beverly Hills electrolysis expert recommended by the girlies on Hot Girls LA. Like, that is a bitch I trust. That, like, her life is in my hands, and she's been... she has been nothing but professional. I trust her with my life. I literally, like, want to bake her cookies when I'm done. You also don't need to go into an office every day. Yeah. That, I can definitely see that. But it's like, just normally, I can't shave every day. So most of the time, I am not completely smoothly shaven. Definitely do get her something nice. Well, okay, the nice thing I'm getting her is $2,000, okay? Like, I am paying her fairly for her time. I do want to give her, like, a little gift at the end of it, just for being such a sweetie. Because she's really nice, she's really sweet. She tells funny stories while I'm getting my hair tortured and poked and defeated. I feel the razor burn issues. I also have curly hair and sensitive skin. Yup. Women! Let's go! Was this your first session? No, this was my second session. And it seems like the closer it is to the bone, the more kind of, like, the more difficult it is. You're a cis male and you're strongly considering this. I have super bad ingrowns. Yeah, straight up, like, especially if you have, like, a place on your face that has, like, specific bad ingrowns, that might be the play. It will make your beard look weird. I will say, it will make your beard look fucking weird. Like, when I got... Oh my god, when I showed up for the second session, my expert was like, your chin is so... It looks good, your chin is so bald! And then she started rubbing my chin and going, haha, baldy! Baldy! It was so fucking funny. I was just like, I want you to make me more bald. Make me more bald. And balden me. She's so cute with it. She, like, my expert is, like, Austrian accent. She has an interesting, like, Mexican German accent. It's really cute. No, she's so cute with it. She's the exact type of she's the exact type of old lady that I want to be. You know, like I cannot wait to be a cute old lady. That I feel like so much of my life is like me as a person. I'm built to be like 65. I'm built to be like I'm built to wear like cute sweaters and shit all day. Yeah, I had aren't there ethnically German speaking folks in Texas stuff? Yeah, yeah. From what I understand, Mexico has a pretty it has a small but important German diaspora, and that's where ranchero music comes from. It's why a lot of Mexican music has like pa 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 in it. It's like why a lot of it's why a lot of Mexican music has accordions in it. Norteño music is also oompa derived. Yeah, yeah, tuba and accordion. Exactly. No, I still remember like going on. I was on a trip up to Portland. We went to the Portland Art Museum, and there's this adorable little cafe in the Portland Art Museum that was really good, by the way. If you're in Portland and you want to go to the Contemporary Art Museum, go to the fucking cafe. It's so cute. Get a piece of Rothko cake. But there were all these old ladies there that were like on a lunch date with the girls, and it was like everyone, they were all dressed up in their cute little coats, and they had like, you know, they did up their hair and did makeup and stuff. I was like, that is what I fucking want. Like that, like it's very, even as like a non-binary trans femme, it's very rare that I see an image of femininity that's like, yes, I want that. Like it's very rare I see an image of femininity that evokes a pang of yearning in me, but that's one of them. It's like being an old lady going on a lunch date with her friends. Like that's the fucking goal there. Yeah, they have Rothko cakes. They have like so Portland the Portland Art Museum gets to boast about Rothko being like a local painter because he lived in Portland for a lot of his life. And a lot of Rothko's most famous works were painted in Portland. And so, like, they have the... Like, I went to go see Rothko number 5. You know, the kind of, like, black and brown and red one. And, like, it's amazing. Like, Rothko really is one of those painters where it's like, you have to see his paintings in person. Like, the effect they have on you is incredible. But then, we went to go get lunch at the Portland Art Museum. And they had cakes that looked like Rothko number 5. And it was so cute. That was such a cool experience, like sitting down and being like, oh, I saw the painting and now I get to eat a cake version of it. Like I got the full experience. I don't know. It's so cute, especially because like a lot of that series of Rothko's paintings were they came from a place of like inarticulate grief. You know, it's like it is a kind of emotionally overwhelming painting. Like it looks like how malaise feels, and then you get to go downstairs and like the whole cafe is like designed around Rothko's work. Like you get to go downstairs to like this cute cafe where there's like all these people having fun and laughing and talking, and you get to eat a cake that looks like it. And it's such a like, it was such an amazing like life goes on moment. Like all these people that showed up to this cafe to see these paintings. It was that was an amazing experience. I loved that. The rest of that Portland trip was a little mid, but that was so much fun. It is. It was such a lovely experience. Oh my gosh. Sort of symbolically consuming your own ennui. Yeah, very much. It was like experiencing the emotion and then allowing it to literally pass through you. You know? I don't. It speaks to my artistic relationship with food. You get to eat someone else's feelings. Yeah, there's almost a sense of like you are it's like even though Rothko is dead, like you are participating in this. You are participating in his feelings in a way that is like beyond him, in a really cool way. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they interviewed Rothko's kids, and they were like, I liked the cake, and they were like, his dad preferred pie, which is cute, which is very cute. It's like it's like good cake too, like straight up, it's good, it's yummy cake. If you have the chance to go to the Portland Art Museum and get a Rothko cake, they change the cake based on what Rothko paintings are in exhibit. It's so cool. What flavor? It was like black forest with, and then the red bar at the bottom was like cherry. Making bacon curry, I didn't brown it properly. Do I deserve good things? No. Fail. Actually, it's fine. Never mind. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Today I have for you more of William Godwin's lives in the Necromancers. US is kind of dicey these days, but that makes the list. Yup. Make a list. All right. Are we feeling anything in particular today, gang? I'm curious about his alchemy section. I think that would be interesting. Let's see. Deities of Greece, demigods, the Argonauts. I'm curious what he thinks about the Argonauts, because they were not really necromancers. They certainly were around a lot of necromancers. Fairies? I am curious about the fairies. It's after alchemy, so let's check that out. Virgil, Polydorus, Dido, Romulus, Numa. The Sorceress of Virgil. Casting out of devils. That's Jewish. Simon Magus. Elymas the Sorcerer. Vespasian, huh? Well, didn't Vespasian have a lot of, like, people accusing him of magic? I know some people tried to say the Golden Fleece was alchemical. Anything with gold will be retroactively considered through alchemical language. Bit curious about the Numa? Yeah. Revolution produced in the history of necromancy and witchcraft upon the establishment of Christianity. General silence of the East respecting individual necromancers. Interesting. Persian tales. Story of Egul. Dark Ages of Europe. This really is like... Oh man, it's like... This really is the the true trap of writing about magic in the medieval era. We don't know fucking anything. Why is this text on the anarchistlibrary.org? Riley explained it on some of the previous streams. You can watch the VODs. Silence of the East sounds fun. It does. Communication of Europe. The communication of Europe and the Saracens. Like, this is the real medieval magic here. It's like... it's fucking Europe receiving texts from the Saracens. English law of high treason. Zito. I don't even know what that is. Transmutation of metals. Raymond Lull. English laws respecting transmutation. Virgil was also not a sorcerer. It was just a medieval legend. Yeah, exactly. Sanguinary proceedings against witchcraft. Okay, so these are people like who had legal proceedings against them as witchcraft, which is fairly rare. Zito was a Bohemian court wizard. Oh, cool. I'll have to read more about him. Urbain Grandier. Latest ideas of James on the subject. Okay, I'm curious about alchemy. Let's check out the alchemy section. To make our catalog of supernatural doings and the lawless imaginations of man the more complete, it may be further necessary to refer to the craft so eagerly cultivated in successive ages of the world of converting inferior metals into gold, to which was usually joined the elixir vitae, or universal medicine, having the quality of renewing the youth of man and causing him to live forever. The first authentic record on this subject is an edict of Diocletian about 300 years after Christ, ordering a diligent search to be made in Egypt for all the ancient books which treated of the art of making gold and silver, that they might without distinction be consigned to the flames. This edict, however, necessarily presumes a certain antiquity to the pursuit, and fabulous history has recorded Solomon, Pythagoras, and Hermes along its distinguished votaries. From this period, the study seems to have slept, till it was revived amongst the Arabians with a lapse of 500 to 600 years. Okay, this is interesting. We actually know a lot more about the early history of alchemy now because of recent discoveries of like Arabic texts that were back translated from, were translated from the 1st century. Let's see. If this is about like 300 AD, we actually have we have translations of alchemical texts from the 1st century. We refer to our earlier stream on Zosimus of Panopolis in my interview with Dr. Shannon Grimes. Has recorded Solomon, Pythagoras, and Hermes among his distinguished votaries. I wonder where from, though, because there's a lot of, like... We also have a lot more archaeological finds. Yeah. I wonder where he's getting this citation from, because, like, these are all figures. Oh my god. These are all figures that have extensive, like, pseudo-literature attributed to them. I'm writing about fucking Hermeticism for work, which is interesting, but frustrating, because, like... Okay, I have a bit of a hot take, chat. Hermeticism is less interesting than it gets credit for. Like, reading, like, even the Hermetic texts in the Nag Hammadi library are very, like, surface level. And it's probably because they were, it's probably because they were initiatory texts, not intended to, like, be the core teachings. It's like, all they really do is talk about the 4 elements, and it's like, yeah, they participate in Gnostic mythology, but it's, like, life-affirming. They think the demiurge is cool, and they want to plumb his mysteries. Like, Hermetic wizards are gatekeeping bastards. I guess, but it's like, if we don't have the inner teachings to discuss, like, the fact that people keep talking about Hermes Trismegistus as this, like, ultimate sage of magic, it's like, okay, but we have the initiatory texts, and they're not that interesting. Like, we have initiatory texts from other traditions, and they're way more interesting. I mean, like, look at Book of the Law, right? The sort of Book 1-1 of Thelema. It's fucking interesting. It has a bunch of fun riddles and mysteries and stuff, but, like, Discourse on the 8th and 9th is not that, like, it's not that esoteric. The Hermetics are the Beatles of wizard shit. It's also not clear how popular they were. Like, in my opinion, I think you can reasonably say that the Hermetics were less well known than the Gnostics. At least that's what the literature kind of implies, is that, like, there's a lot more evidence for widespread knowledge of the Gnostics than there was the Hermetics. Like, fucking Plotinus writes about the Gnostics, but he doesn't mention the Hermetics. Hermes Trismegistus overhyped. Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, I've got this. I read this book. If you're on the Patreon, you know what I'm talking about. I bought this book about, like, Hermes Trismegistus, and it's like a scholarly text on the history of Hermeticism. And it spends a long time talking about these, like, Egyptian oracular texts that are pretty interesting. But they're basically trying to discover references to Hermeticism within these oracular texts, and I don't think they're there. They spend, like, a third of the book talking about how, like, there's numerological references to Hermes Trismegistus in the Oracle of the Lamb, and I'm like, yeah, they both books heavily feature the number 55, but like that doesn't mean that they're connected. Like that's so tenuous. You're almost making an esoteric argument in and of yourself. Who liked Hermeticism? Like what social classes? It like Hermeticism is very clearly like the same cultural milieu that Zosimus came out of. Like first century Alexandria, out of work Egyptian temple priests that speak Greek and are aware of early Christian doctrines. Hi, Charlotte. Welcome to the stream. We're reading today. It's clearly out of work Egyptian temple priests that spoke Greek and read, like, were aware of Gnostic mythology and shit like that. My theory is that the Hermetic corpus is out of work Egyptian temple priests basically running private schools on the side. Like, this is basically doctrine for them to be like, yeah, we just need to make some money on the side. It's clear that they were like, these texts were produced for private consumption. They were not meant to be widely distributed. And it's like, from the shape of Hermeticism, it looks like it was really just like the Hermetic master would invite you over to his house and then just like, I don't know, teach you sacred mathematics or something. Could be argued that esotericism in general is a lower middle class cultural petty bourgeois thing. You're overstating your case. Like, ancient Alexandria did not have a bourgeois. Like, they were a late Ptolemaic theocracy. They did not have capitalism yet. However, there is something to be said for, like, okay, for most of history, it's not a petty bourgeois thing. It's like it's more of an aristocratic thing, because to write down books of magic, you have to know how to write. Which generally means that you work for the government or the church, or both. It being a way for them to support themselves as private teachers makes sense. Yeah. That's kind of what I think. And it's clear that a lot of the Hermetic texts are familiar with not Neoplatonism. They were familiar with Middle Platonism, so they knew like the guy that's also like a church father, the Jewish guy who wrote Origen. It's clear that they reference Origen sometimes. Yeah, I may be underestimating the standing of the average scribe. Well, first century Alexandria was interesting because it had a lot of low-level scribes that Philo, thank you, not Origen, Philo of Alexandria, thank you. But speaking of the social standing of the average, like, first century Alexandrian scribe, like, the Egyptian temple system was a lot like medieval churches, in that a lot of the lowest level scribes, like, barely knew how to write. They were basically just like human printing presses. I think occultism is most common amongst intellectual laborers, and the position of those laborers varies a lot based on the time. True. It's why a lot of, like, late medieval and early Renaissance occultism happens from bored housewives, like people that know how to read because they need to read for work, but are also bored and have a lot of free time. Nerds nerding at nerds. Well, it's more like the conception of a nerd is to be a nerd, you kind of need to be able to engage in intellectual labor frivolously, which is not something many people had access to. I do think a lot of occultists throughout history they're quite literally, like, autistic for religion. Like, a lot of these people are like, they have priest autism, and they're really into systems and shit like that. A lot of them are newspaper publicists. Yeah, a lot of them are related to print shops and whatnot. The conception of a nerd, the historical materialist conception of the nerd, yeah. You need frivolous intellectual labor. this might be a bias regarding to what we consider occultism. Like, we don't have good evidence for working class occultism before the 19th century. May, would you call the PGM working class occultism? Because, like, the PGM practitioners were very clearly people that were, like... They were clearly, like, itinerant, wandering occultists that, like, made medicine and stuff. It's a lot closer... Like, okay, you know when you're driving around... Like, you're driving around a small town and there's, like, a house that has a neon sign that says psychic outside? Like, that's the type of person that was doing the PGM. Like, that social caste of people is the PGM bourgeois. I don't think the PGM is bourgeois. I think they might have been catering... They might have been catering to, like, wealthy landowners, but I think it's pretty clear that the PGM practitioners were, like... They were, like, wandering thaumatopoi, like, and pharmacon, or pharmakeia? Misconjugating my Koine Greek terms, hack occultist. Yeah, there were a lot of rural occult traditions. Yeah, exactly. Pharmakoi? Pharmakides? I don't know. But like wandering pharmacons. Like, clearly itinerant practitioners that catered to a sort of, there was no middle class. It was really just like catering to a poorer, more rural background. Here, let's keep reading. It is well known, however, how eagerly it was cultivated in various countries of the world for many centuries after it was divulged by Geber. That's Jabir ibn Hayyan. Starting my poison convention and calling it pharmacon. Might be a stupid question, but what is the line between superstition and occultism? We'll get to that. Many of the most wonderful talents devoted their lives to the investigation, and in multiplied instances of discovery, was said to have been completed. Vast sums of money were consumed in this fruitless endeavor, and in a later period, it seems to have furnished an excellent handle to vain and specious projectors to extort money from those more amply provided with the goods of fortune themselves. That's interesting. Men of the most wonderful talents devoted their lives to the investigation, and in multiplied instances, the discovery was said to have been completed. See, that's interesting because, like, Jabir ibn Hayyan and the Jabirian corpus more broadly were doing stuff, but, like, the Jabirian alchemists were doing real intellectual labor, because, like, alchemical techniques are very useful for some things. You can make, like, perfumes, you can strip you can strip metal out of ore, you can produce pigments and dyes with them, but this specific idea of the transformation of base metals into higher metals is something we've talked about before. Which is, like, it's possible if you have a 1st century Alexandrian definition of gold. Like, with what we know of chemistry now, it is not possible, but by by 1st century Alexandrian standards, it was definitely possible. Also, to answer your question about the difference between superstition and occultism is praxis and theory. Gideon Bohawk writes about this in Ancient Jewish Magic, where superstition, it transitions into occult thought once you have people that are making theories and then testing those theories, right? It's like, if you say, make this potion to gain an audience with a king, and then another person says, I tried this, it worked, and if you want favor with a crowd, like speaking in front of a crowd rather than a king, modify the recipe in this way, like swap out the lion's blood for the blood of a tiger. Like, that's when like superstition becomes an occult tradition. That's when it becomes like a systemic like, once it becomes systemized, you enter into a cult thought. Bronze, if treated correctly, can become gold by classical Greek definitions based on color. Exactly. The art, no doubt, is in itself sufficiently mystical, having been pursued by multitudes who seem to themselves ever on the eve of consummation, but is constantly baffled when their own apprehension most on the verge of success. The discovery, indeed, appears to be on the face of it of the most delicate nature, as the benefit must wholly depend on its being reserved to one or a very few, the object being unbounded wealth, which is nothing unless confined. That's interesting. Like, saying, like, if we figured out how to transform lead into gold, it would be in your best interest to not share that secret, because if everyone could do it, gold would lose its value. If the power of creating gold is diffused, wealth by such diffusion becomes poverty, and everything after a short time would but return to what it had been, add to which the nature of discovery has ordinarily been that, when one clue has been found, it reveals itself to several about the same period of time. That's literally true. That's true. He's touching on the economic forces behind alchemy. Holy shit. Having fun? The art, as we have said, it is in its own nature sufficient... Oh wait, we read this. But besides this, it appears that those whose object was the transmutation of metals very frequently joined to this pursuit the study of astrology and even the practice of sorcery. Now, what do you mean by sorcery? I think he defines it earlier. So much delicacy, and also his thing about, like, alchemy being independently discovered at many different periods in time, that's true. China discovered it around the same period, completely independently, because, you know, if you distill arsenic, sulfur, and mercury, they have similar properties for melting metals by chemicals, like chemically. Bathing gold in distilled mercury does the same shit whether you live in Alexandria or China. So much delicacy and nicety were supposed to be required in the process for the transmutation of metals that it could not hope to succeed under a favorable conjunction of the planets, and most flourishing pretenders to the art boasted that they had also a familiar intercourse with certain spirits of the supernatural power, which assisted them in their undertakings. He's talking about Zosimus here. And enabled them to penetrate into things undiscoverable to mere human sagacity to predict future events. I have a theory on this. Like, okay. This is a bit of a crack theory. Chat, you know how if you try to bake the same cake at a high elevation as you do at sea level, it changes? Like you have to cook it a little longer or a little shorter. Ambient barometric pressure probably affects alchemical operations, because you're doing the same thing. You're making big, delicate kilns that need to be sealed with clay in specific ways. I think that's why the astrology aspect of it was important for first century alchemy, because, like, doing it in the winter before a storm, when there's a hot front moving in and, like, more like ambient static electricity in the air, will probably affect your alchemical operations. The two things that influence matter phase changes are temperature and pressure. Exactly. And so, I think tracking the motion of the stars to just be, like, I think it's less like doing it literally under the sign of Jupiter and more like doing it in the winter when it's not stormy or something is probably better. I'm curious. It makes me want to go back to Zosimus and figure out, like, when the best times for alchemy are, and then if we cross-reference that with Chinese alchemical texts based on the weather patterns of the places that they were doing alchemy, I think that there's a fucking thesis paper for you. I think that's where the astrology element comes in. This might be big. Exactly. Okay, so that's the whole section on alchemy. Goddamn. We know so much more now, William Godwin. Okay, let's do fairies. Another mode in which the wild and erratic imagination of our ancestors manifested itself was in the creation of a world of visionary beings of a less terrific character, but which did not fail to annoy their thoughts and perplex their determinations, known by the name of fairies. There are few things more worthy of contemplation, and at the same time tend to place the dispositions of our ancestors in a more amiable point of view than the creation of this airy and fantastic race. What a lovely turn of words. They were so diminutive as almost to elude the organs of human sight. They were at large, even though confined to the smallest dimensions. They, quote, could be bounded in a nutshell and count themselves kings of infinite space. So he's talking about fairies as being tiny. Their midnight revels by forest side or fountain the belated peasant saw, or dreamed he saw while overhead the moon sat arbitress and nearer to the earth. Wheeled her pale course, they, on their mirth and dance, intent, with jocund music charmed his ear, at once and fear his heart rebounds. Small circles marked the grass in solitary places, the trace of their little feet, which, though narrow, were ample enough to afford every accommodation of their pastime. Getting real poetic here, buddy. The fairy tribes appear to have been everywhere, distinguished for their patronage of truth, simplicity, and industry, and their abhorrence of sensuality and prevarication. They left little rewards in secret as tokens of their approbation of the virtues they loved, and by their supernatural power afforded a supplement to pure and excellent intentions. When the corporeal powers of their virtuous sank under the pressure of human infirmity, where they conceived displeasure, the punishments they inflicted were, for the most part, such as served moderately to vex and harass the offending party, rather than to inflict upon him permanent and irredeemable evils. I don't know, man. Fairies are pretty evil in a lot of the literature. Like, they fuck with people. They're, they love just, like, being mischievous. Their airy tongues would syllable men's names on sands and shores and desert wilderness. They were supposed to guide their wandering lights in that obscurity of the night beguiled the weary traveler, quote, through bog, through bush, through brake, through briar, but their power of evil only extended or was employed to vex those who, by a certain obliquity and conduct, gave occasion for their reproofs. They besides pinched and otherwise tormented the objects of their displeasure, and though the mischiefs they executed were not of the most vital kind, yet coming from a supernatural enemy and being inflicted by invisible hands, they could not fail to greatly disturb and disorder those who suffered from them. There is at first sight a great inconsistency in the representations of these imaginary people. For the most part, they are described to us as a stature and appearance almost too slight to be marked by our grosser human organs. At other times, however, and especially in the extremely popular tales digested by M. Perrault, they show themselves in indiscriminate assemblies, brought together for some solemn festivity or otherwise, and join in the human frequenters of the scene without occasioning inquiry or surprise. They are particularly concerned in the business of summarily and without appeal bestowing miraculous gifts, sometimes as a mark of special friendship and favor, sometimes with a malicious and hostile intention. But we are to consider that the spirits can every form assume so soft, and uncompound their essence pure, not tied to manacled with joint or limb, like cumbrous flesh, but in what shape they choose, dilated or condensed, bright or obscure, can execute their airy purposes, and works of love or enmity fulfill. And then again, as their bounties were showy, so were they specially apt to disappear in the moment, the most splendid palaces and magnificent exhibitions vanishing away and leaving their disconcerted dupe with his robes converted into the poorest rags, instead of glittering state, find himself suddenly in the midst of desolation and removed no man knew whither. One of the mischiefs that were most frequently imputed to them was the changing of a beautiful child of some doting parents for a babe marked with ugliness and deformity. But this idea seems fraught with inconsistency. The natural stature of the fairy is one of the smallest dimensions, and though they could occasionally dilate their figure as to imitate humanity, yet it is so to be presumed that this was only for a special purpose, and, that purpose being obtained, they shrank back habitually into their characteristic littleness. I know some girls like that. The change, therefore, can only be supposed to have been one human child for another. Yeah, Godwin, how did you know this? Is he going to connect him to Jinn? They're kind of Jinn-like. He calls them airy. That's very Jinn-like. Wow, only like 3 sentences on the Rosicrucians. All right, here. I'm gonna pause for a second, get myself some water. Hold tight. We'll be back with more reading. Bonjour, mes amis. I return, and I have a protein shake. I got a new flavor today. This one's chocolate. Do any of you use that Ghost protein brand? Meal. My meal. Ghost protein. They sell various protein powders and protein accessories. But they have like Ghost sells like cinnamon toast crunch flavored ones. Like they have a hot chocolate flavored one that has little marshmallows in it. It's frankly a bit too sugary for me. Living weapon coated. How is it living weapon coated? What are you talking about? The order is fairies, Rosicrucians, then sylphs, gnomes, and salamanders and undines. Okay, I'm curious what he says about the Rosicrucians. Oh, I thought it was more a protein of a ghost thing. No, it's the brand is called Ghost, and they sell protein powder. That They sell protein powder in little boy flavors. Also, if y'all are enjoying the stream, I would appreciate it if you want to drop a sub or something. Twitch is saying we need 9. I don't know what happens. I've been streaming for like almost 2 years now, and I still don't really know how Twitch works, but y'all keep showing up like the rubes you are, the fools. You're all my thralls. Dance my puppets. Surely a Google search would avail that information. Yeah, sure. I guess I'm your thrall. You can be my thrall. That's fine. I need to get some fucking emotes in this. This is like the 15th time we've talked about this, but I do need to figure out how to put emotes here. What emotes do you guys want? Like, I don't actually use Twitch all that much. I know artists, but I don't really know what, like, a snake. Yeah, but what does the snake mean? Kitty? What common emotions do you experience? I think wise discourse needs to be a thing. I like Val's thing where a lot of their emotes are just like different emotions represented as like Val Bunny doing cute faces and whatnot. Those are cute. We could do some of those. Yeah, we could do a bunch of Maddie emotes. I wonder who did Val's. I really like Val's. One of these. Well, I do need a kitty emote. I do need like a pathetic wet cat emote. Some of the emotes from the Discord. Yup. Exploding snake. Anything like, we need like Serpent of Wisdom or something. I do need an EOW. Yeah. Okay, I will not remember this. Let me like write this shit down. Yeah, some like Demoli faces, but for fucking Maddie. Yeah, we'll do Maddie faces, we'll do sad demiurge, we'll do EOW. I do want wise discourse. Wise discourse would be fun as like a pair of emotes. We really need like sad demiurge on Discord as well. Yeah. Your dangerous bullshit skeleton is one of the funniest images. Yeah, we could have a dangerous bullshit meter. That could be fun. I do want I want to change my header soon. Wise is load bearing. Wise is very load bearing. We need like a crack theory. We need like a crack theory one. We need one where it's like, we need one for when we're smoking that pure esotericism. Something like a Manly P. Hall face or something. I do like the Mystagogue. I do like the. Ugh. Oh yeah, +2, -2 as prayer hands. That needs to happen. Yeah, we need pray for, pray against, like plus prayer, plus virtue, minus virtue. That would be fun. Parson explosion. That's fun. I don't really want to have an image of Jack Parsons getting blown up. It was, frankly, a tragic way for him to die. Achieved Gnosis? I understand the feeling. Samsara emote? I do want, like, achieved gnosis was that's a good emotion for this stream. Holy shit! Irelier, oh my god! Holy shit, 5 subs, thank you so much. That's crazy. Thank you so much. If we achieve gnosis, we need lost gnosis. Well, okay, I think that's what +1 and minus, or +2 and -2 are for. You got promoted and forgot last week? Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, Irelier. Can we get some creatures from the Garden of Earthly Delights? Ooh. Oh, we need White Pharaoh. We absolutely need White Pharaoh. No, that'll be our like smoking crack one. Yeah, we definitely need a White Pharaoh. Trying to figure out if I recognize you. Oh. White Pharaoh from the Pharaoh slots with the Thelema costume one. I want someone to draw a White Pharaoh. I think we can make him even whiter. Who's that Blavatsky puppet? Koot Humi. A beautiful FFFFF Pharaoh. Yeah, exactly. Okay, do you guys know what I'm talking about when I mention the post that's like, hey, how do you know that information? And they just post, like, an image of Thoth on the Emerald Tablet. Like, we need a White Pharaoh. Hey, thank you for the sub! Oh my god! No, I did not make that post, but I have made that post before. I love that. I love using that as a reaction image. Like, source the Emerald Tablet. Yeah, just 4 more for something. I don't know. Yeah, we'll do a Meki emote. That would be cute. I'm writing these down so I don't forget. We definitely need some Maddie emotes. That would be cute. We need like a Maddie Pog. That would be good. Akashic Library emote. What would that even look like though? Yeah, we need like Maddie Pog and we need like a Maddie Smug. We need like, oh my god, there's a fucking helicopter flying overhead. Holy shit. Yeah, we need like a Maddie clearly you don't own an air fryer face. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Maddie kill. Can we hear about Zito? Yeah, I'm also curious about Zito. Let's check out Zito. Very extraordinary things are related of Zito, a sorcerer in the court of Wenceslas, king of Bohemia and afterwards emperor of Germany in the latter part of the 14th century. This is perhaps, all things considered, the most wonderful specimen of magical power anywhere to be found. Interesting. Okay. You're building this guy up quite a bit. It is gravely recorded by Dubravius, Bishop of Olmütz, in the history of Bohemia. It was publicly exhibited on occasion of the marriage of Wenceslas with Sophia, daughter of the Elector Palatine of Bavaria, before a vast assembled multitude. Oh, Adorno. Yeah, we need Adorno. we could do like Adorno edited with like a smile over his face. Adore, yes. Like, yeah, Adorno with the BFDI smile, exactly. The father-in-law of the king, well aware of the bridegroom's known predilection for theatrical exhibitions and magical illusions, brought with him to Prague, the capital of Wenceslas, a whole wagon load of Morris dancers and jugglers who made their appearance among the royal retinue. Meanwhile, Zito, the favorite magician of the king, took his place obscurely among the ordinary spectators. He, however, immediately arrested the attention of the strangers, being remarked for his extraordinary deformity and a mouth that stretched completely from ear to ear. Zito was for some time engaged in quietly observing the tricks and sleights that were exhibited. At length, while the chief magician of the Elector Palatine was still busily employed in showing some of the most admired specimens of his art, the Bohemian, indignant at what appeared to him the bungling exhibitions of his brother artist, came forward and reproached him with the unskillfulness of his performances. The two professors presently fell into warm debate. Zito, provoked at the insolence of his rival, made no more ado but swallowed him whole before the multitude, attired as he was, but all but his shoes, which he objected to because they were dirty. He then retired for a short while to a closet, and presently returned, leading the magician along with him. Bro, what? What are we fucking talking about? He ate a guy? He ate a guy and spat out his shoes? Oh my god. We have a lot of hype for Zito eating a guy. I will share this. Oh, Twitch put a cute little smug message in my thing. Let's do that. That's fucking crazy. He just like ate a guy with his huge mouth. Thank you everyone, by the way. Having thus disposed of his rival, Zito proceeded to exhibit the wonders of his art. Having thus disposed of his rival by eating him whole, Zito proceeded to exhibit the wonders of his art. He showed himself first in his proper shape, and then in those of different persons successively, with countenances and a stature totally dissimilar to his own. At one time splendidly attired in robes of purple and silk, and then in the twinkling of an eye in coarse linen and in a clownish coat of frieze. He would proceeded along the field with a smooth and undulating motion, without changing the posture of a limb, for all the world as if he were carried along in a ship. Wait, he's like Gmod sliding. He would keep pace with the king's chariot in a car drawn by barn door fowls. He also amused the king's guests as they sat at a table by causing, when they stretched out their hands to the different dishes, sometimes their hands to turn into the cloven feet of an ox, and at other times into the hooves of a horse. He would clap on them antlers of a deer, so that when they put their heads out the window to see some sight that was going on by, they could by no means draw them back in. This guy's funny. While he, in the meantime, feasted on the savory cates that had been spread before them at his leisure. This is nuts. Where the fuck is he getting this? Yeah, he was doing the Jamiroquai next to the king. At one time, he pretended to be in want of money, and to task his wits devise the means to procure it. On such an occasion, he took up a handful of grains of corn and presently gave them the form and appearance of 30 hogs well fattened for the market. Hell yeah. He drove these hogs to the residence of one Michael. He then took the hogs to the home of Michael, a rich dealer, Michael the rich dealer, who was remarked for being penurious and thrifty in his bargains. He offered them to Michael for what price he could judge reasonable. The bargain was presently struck, Zito at the time warning the purchaser that he could on no account drive them to the river to drink. They must be thirsty hogs. You may not allow them to drink. Michael, however, paid no attention to this advice, and the hogs no sooner arrived at the river than they turned into grains of corn as before. The dealer, greatly enraged by this trick, sought high and low for the seller that he might be revenged upon him. At length he found him in a vinter's shop, seemingly in a gloomy and absent frame of mind, reposing himself with his legs stretched out on a form. The dealer called out to him, but seemed not to hear. Finally, he seized Zito by one foot, plucking at it with all of his might. The foot came away with the leg and thigh, and Zito screamed out, apparently in great agony. He seized Michael by the nape of the neck and dragged him before a judge with one leg, and the two set up their separate complaints. Michael for the fraud he had committed upon him, and Zito for the irreparable injury he had suffered in his person. From this adventure came the proverb, frequent in the days of the historian, speaking of a person who had made an improvident bargain. He has just made such a purchase as Michael did with his hogs. Yo! Bro just made such a purchase as Michael did with his hogs, bro. Bro, I'm beginning to suspect you made just such a purchase as Michael did with his hogs. Bro brought the Michael hogs. People are not discussing Zito and Michael's hogs enough. Bro straight up bought the Michael hog. Some historian theorized that Zito was a Hussite, and that's why Dubravius made him an asshole wizard. That's awesome. I want to learn more about this guy. I'm starting to think this author might have made this bullshit up. Zito did what to Michael's hogs? He transformed them into grains of corn, bro. Oh my god, that's crazy. We need to learn more about Michael. They put Zito on a postage stamp? Hell yeah. Isn't history fun? Okay, I'm curious what he has to say about Simon Magus. Or wait, actually, does he have Albertus Magnus? I'm curious what he has to say about Albertus Magnus. Fuck. Albertus Magnus, a Dominican, was one of the most famous of these. He was born, according to some accounts, in the year 1193, according to some others in 1205. It is reported of him that he was naturally very dull, and so incapable of instruction that he was on the point of quitting the cloister from despair of learning what his vocation required, when the Blessed Virgin appeared to him in a vision, and inquired of him in which he desired to excel, philosophy or divinity. He chose philosophy, and the Virgin assured him that he should become incomparable in that, but as a punishment for not having chosen divinity, he should sink before he died into his former stupidity. It is added that, after this apparition, he had an infinite deal of wit, and advanced in science with so rapid a progress as to utterly astonish his masters, and afterwards became the Bishop of Ratisbon. Bro got medicated for his ADHD. It is related of Albertus that he made an entire man of brass, putting together its limbs under various constellations and occupying no less than 30 years in its formation. The man would answer all sorts of questions. Is this where this myth comes from? Is this where the brazen man comes from? Because this is something that, like, every intellectual from, like, the 10th century to, like, the 15th, to, like, the 17th century gets accused of doing. The man would answer all sorts of questions and was even employed by its maker as a domestic. But what is more extraordinary, he had a maid. He made a robot maid. What is more extraordinary, the machine is said to have become at length so garrulous that Thomas Aquinas, being a pupil of Albertus and finding himself perpetually disturbed in the abstrusest speculations. God damn, that is a difficult turn of words. By its uncontrollable loquacity, and in a rage caught up a hammer and beat it to pieces. According to other accounts, the man of Albertus Magnus was composed not of metal, but of flesh and bones like other men. But this being afterwards judged to be impossible, and the virtue of images, rings, and planetary sigils being in great vogue, it was conceived that this figure was formed of brass and indebted for its virtue to certain conjunctions and aspects of the planets. Nowed. Interesting. I'll have to track that down, because that's a proto-Frankenstein right there. That's really interesting. You've seen one of the hands that held the hammer in Naples? That's so cool. I need a brazen hand now. I need a brazen hand holding a hammer now. A further extraordinary story told of Albertus Magnus, well calculated to exemplify the ideas of magic which through these ages abounded. William, Earl of Holland and King of Romans, was expected by a certain time to pass through Cologne. Albertus had set his hand upon obtaining from this prince the cessation of a certain tract of land, which was to erect a convent. The better to succeed in his applications, and he conceived of the following scheme. He invited the prince on a journey to partake of a magnificent entertainment. To the surprise of everybody, when the prince arrived, he found the preparations for the banquet spread in the open air. It was in the depths of winter, when the earth was bound up in frost, and the whole face of things was covered in snow. The attendants of the court were mortified, and began to express discontent in loud murmurs. No sooner, however, was the king with Albertus and his courtiers seated at the table than the snow instantly disappeared. The temperature of the summer showed itself, and the summer burst forth with a dazzling splendor. The ground became covered with the richest verdure. The trees were clothed once more in foliage, flowers and fruits, and a vintage of the richest grapes, accompanied with a ravishing color, invited the specters to partake. 1,000 birds sang on every branch. A train of pages showed themselves, fresh and graceful in person and attire, were ready to diligently supply the wants of all, while everyone was struck with astonishment as to who they were and from whence they came. The guests were obliged to throw off their upper garments to better cool themselves. The whole assembly was delighted with their entertainment, and Albertus easily gained his suit of the king. Presently after, the banquet disappeared. All was wintry and solitary as before. The snow lay thick upon the ground, and the guests in all haste snatched up the garments they had laid aside, and hurried into the apartments, that by numerous fires on the blazing hearth they might counteract the dangerous chill which threatened to seize their limbs. That's really cool. Well, okay, Albertus Magnus isn't a church father, but he's like well known. They're gonna have a modding jam for Caves of Cud next month, and I want to make a mod for it, but I have no ideas. Use this. Make brazen automatons. Make it so that you can roleplay as Thomas Aquinas. He's a doctor of the church. Okay. I'm also curious about Roger Bacon. I'm curious about what he has to say about these Enlightenment guys. Maybe. Roger Bacon, of whom extraordinary stories of magic have been told, and who was about 20 years younger than Albertus, was one of the rarest geniuses that have existed on Earth. He was a Franciscan friar. He wrote grammars of the Latin, Greek, and Hebrew languages. He was profound in the science of optics. He explained the nature of burning glasses and of glasses which magnify and diminish, the microscope and the telescope. He discovered the composition of gunpowder, and he ascertained the true length of the solar year. And his theory was afterwards brought into general use, but upon a narrow scale by Pope Gregory the 13th, with nearly 100 years after his death. Why are these in alphabetical order? I don't know. They're organized by era and then alphabetical order. Twitch is saying one more sub to go until something presentful happens. But for all these discoveries, he underwent a series of the most bitter persecutions. It was imputed to him by the superiors of his order that the improvements he suggested in natural philosophy were the effects of magic, and were suggested to him through intercourse with infernal spirits. Oh, classic. They forbade him to communicate any of his speculations. They wasted his frame with rigorous fasting, often restricting him to a diet of bread and water, and prohibited all strangers to come across him. Yet, he went on indefatigably in pursuit of the secrets of nature. At length, Clement IV, to whom he appealed, procured him a considerable degree of liberty, but after the death of that pontiff, he was again put under confinement, and continued in that state for a further period of 10 years. He was liberated, but a short time before his death. Huh. Reminds me of Agrippa. Friend says that among other ingenious contrivances, he put statues into motion, and drew articulate sounds from a brazen head. Okay, yeah, here's another mention of the fucking brazen head. Not, however, by magic, but by an artificial application of the principles of natural philosophy. This probably furnished the foundation for the later tale of Friar Bacon and Friar Bungay, which one of the earliest productions to which the art of printing was also applied in England. The two persons were said to have entertained the project of enclosing England with a wall, as to render it inaccessible to any invader. They accordingly raised the devil, and the person best able to inform them as to how this would be done. The devil advised them to make a brazen head, with all the internal structure and organs of a human head. The construction would cost them much time, and they must wait with patience until the faculty of speech descended upon it. It would finally, however, become an oracle, and if the question were propounded to it, it would teach them the solution to their problem. The friars spent several years in bringing the structure to perfection, and then waited day after day in the expectation it would utter articulate sounds. At length, the nature became exhausted in them, and they lay down to sleep, having first given it strictly in charge to a servant of theirs, clownish in nature, but of strict fidelity, that he should awaken in them the moment the image began to speak. The period arrived. The head uttered sounds, but such as the clown judged unworthy of notice. Time is, it said. No notice was taken, and a long pause ensued. Time was, a similar pause, and no notice. Time is past. And the moment these words were uttered, a tremendous storm ensued, with thunder and lightning, and the head was shivered into 1,000 pieces, and thus the experiment of Friar Bacon and Friar Bungay came to nothing. Never give your brazen head to a clownish servant, especially when there's shivering lightning outside. Yeah, distinguishing between magic and natural philosophy. Mark your bingo cards. They made a play about this. Here's how it ends according to Wikipedia. His bad servant Miles, haunted by Bacon's conjured devils, gets a promise of a tapster's job in hell from one of them and rides to perdition on the devil's back. That's cool. Okay, we got Peter Debano and Thomas Aquinas. I'm liking these Renaissance guys. Let's keep going. What's a tapster? Yeah, what is a tapster? I makes me think that it's like the guy in charge of tapping the casks of mead. You are all my clownish servants, by the way. I'm Googling what a tapster is. Yeah, it's a bartender. So he got to be a bartender in hell. That's cool. Man, running a bar in hell, that would be so cool. If my job was supervising brazen heads, I would also take a job as a bartender. Hell yeah. He got to end Barts in hell. Doesn't that happen in Bayonetta? That would be badass. That's such a Bayonetta thing to happen. Thomas Aquinas, who has likely been brought under the imputation of magic, was one of the profoundest scholars and subtlest logicians of his day. He also furnishes a remarkable instance of the ascendant which the friars of the time obtained over the minds of ingenious young men smitten with the thirst of knowledge. He was a youth of illustrious birth, and received the rudiments of his education under the monks of Monte Cassino and in the University of Naples. But, not contented with these advantages, he secretly entered himself into the Society of Preaching Friars, or Dominicans, at 17 years of age. His mother, being indignant that he should thus take a vow of poverty and sequester himself from the world for life, employed every means in her power to induce him to alter his purpose, but in vain. The friars, to deliver him from her importunities, removed him from Naples to Terracina, from Terracina to Anagnia, and from Anagnia to Rome. His mother followed him in all these changes of residence, but was not permitted so much to see him. At length, she spirited up his 2 elder brothers to seize him by force. They waylaid him in the road to Paris, whither he was sent to complete his course of instruction, and carried him off to the castle of Aquino, where he had been born. Here he was confined for 2 years, but he found a way to correspond with the superiors of his order, and finally escaped from a window in the castle. St. Thomas Aquinas, for he was canonized after his death, exceeded perhaps all men that ever existed in the severity and strictness of his metaphysical disquisitions. Ooh, great word. Catch you later, Weird Mustard. St. Thomas Aquinas, for he was canonized after his death, exceeded perhaps all men that ever existed in the severity and strictness of his metaphysical disquisitions, and thus acquired the name of the Seraphic Doctor. Badass. Oh, man. So I forget that I have adult dyslexia until I see a word I've never seen before, and it looks like it never looks like English to me. It was to be expected that a man who thus immersed himself in the depths of thought should be an inexorable enemy to noise and interruption. We have seen that he dashed to pieces an artificial man of brass that Albertus Magnus, who was his tutor, had spent 30 years bringing to perfection, being impelled to this violence by its perpetual and unceasing garrulity. Oh! That's why Albertus Magnus that's probably why Albertus Magnus has such a reputation as a wizard. They're doing the fucking pseudo-Aristotle thing to him. Like, obviously, like, Aristotle was the tutor of Alexander, and so every writer after him wanted to cast him as this, like, court mage theory, this court mage figure to Alexander. I think they're doing the same thing with Thomas Aquinas and Albertus Magnus. That's really interesting. It is further said that his study being placed with great thoroughfare, where the grooms were all day long exercising their horses, he found it necessary to apply a remedy to this nuisance. He made, by the laws of magic, a small horse of brass, which he buried 2 or 3 feet underground in the midst of the highway, and, having done so, no horse would any longer pass along the road. It was in vain that the grooms with whip and spur sought to conquer their repugnance. They were finally compelled to give up the attempt, and to choose another place for their daily exercise. It has further been sought to fix the imputation of magic upon Thomas Aquinas by imputing him certain books written on that science, but these are now acknowledged to be spurious. Very cool. Thomas Aquinas died in a traffic accident. He was riding a donkey and hit his stupid head on a branch. This is a surprisingly cogent, if fairly surface level, history of magic. I'm having a lot of fun reading this. It's teaching me a lot. Peter of Abano. This is Pietro d'Abano.
Pietro d'Abano, so called from a village of that name in the city of Padua, where he was born in the year 1250, was an eminent philosopher, mathematician, and astrologer, but especially excelled in physic. Finding that science at a low ebb in his native country, he resorted to Paris, where it especially flourished, and in a time returning home, exercised his art with extraordinary success, by that means accumulated great wealth. By all his fame and attainments were poisoned to him by the accusation of magic. Among other things, he was said to possess 7 spirits, each of them enclosed in a crystal vessel, from whom he received every information he desired in the 7 liberal arts. He was further reported to have the extraordinary faculty of causing the money he expended in his disbursements immediately to come back to his own purse. He was besides of a hasty and revengeful temper. In consequence of this, it happened to him that, having a neighbor who had an admirable spring of water in his garden, and who was accustomed to suffer the physician to send him a daily supply, but for some displeasure or inconvenience withdrew his permission, Pietro d'Abano, by the aid of the devil, removed the spring from the garden in which it had flowed and turned it to waste in the public street. For some of these accusations he was called to account by the tribunal of the Inquisition, which he was upon his trial. The unfortunate man died. But so unfavorable was the judgment of the inquisitors respecting him that they decreed that his bones should be dug up and publicly burned. Some of his friends got intimation of this and saved him from the impending disgrace by removing his remains. Disappointed in this, the inquisitors proceeded to burn him in effigy. Okay, what does he have to say about the English law of treason here? I'm enjoying this. Dude had the lava rock. It may seem strange in a treatise concerning necromancy that should have the occasion to speak of the English law of high treason, but on reflection, perhaps it may not altogether be alien to the subject. This crime is ordinarily considered by our lawyers as limited and defined by the statute of 25 Edward III. As Blackstone had observed, by the ancient common law, there was a great latitude left in the breast of the judges to determine what treason was or not so, whereby the creatures of tyrannical power had opportunity to create abundance of constrictive treasons, that is, to raise, by forced and arbitrary constrictions, offenses into the crime and punishment of treason, but which were never suspected to be such. To prevent these inconveniences, the statute of 25th Edward III was made. The statute divides the treason into 7 distinct branches, and the first and chief of these is when a man doth compass or imagine the death of our lord and king. I see, because one of the most commonly reported forms of magic in the medieval era was courtly intrigue magic, like the prince who is third in line contracting a magician to cast a spell to bring death to the prince that is second in line. Now, the first circumstance that strikes us in this affair is why the crime was not expressed in a more perspicuous and appropriate language. Why, for example, was it not said that in the first and chief branch of treason was to, quote, kill the king? Or, if that limitation was not to be sufficiently ample, could it have been added to treason, attempt to intend or contrive to kill the king? We are apt to make too large an allowance for what is considered as the vague and obsolete language of our ancestors. Logic was the element in which the scholars of what are called the Dark Ages were especially at home. It was at that period that the description of human geniuses, called the schoolmen, principally flourished. The writers who preceded this Christian era possessed in extraordinary degree the gift of imagination and invention, but they had little to boast on the score of arrangement, and discovered little skill in the strictness of an accurate deduction. Meanwhile, the schoolmen had surprising subtlety in weaving the web of an argument and arriving by a close deduction, through a multitude of steps, to a sound and irresistible conclusion. Our lawyers, to a certain degree, formed themselves on the discipline of the schoolmen. Nothing can be forcibly contrasted than the mode of pleasing among the ancients and that which has characterized the process of the moderns. The pleadings of the ancients were the praxes of the art of oratorical persuasion, and the pleadings of the moderns sometimes, though rarely, deviate into the oratory, but principally consist in dexterous subtleties upon words, or a nice series of deductions. The whole contexture, which is endeavored to be woven into one of indissoluble substance. Several striking examples have been preserved in the mode of pleading in the reign of Edward II, in which the exceptions taken from the defendant and the replies supporting the mode of proceeding on behalf of the plaintiff in no respect fall short of the most admired shifts, quirks, and subtleties of the great lawyers of later times. Okay, where are you going with this? That was a long paragraph. I think he's saying that, like, casting a spell against someone counts as trying to kill the king. I'm skimming. Yeah, that seems to be what he's saying here. Yeah, imagining the death. He's comparing that to casting a spell. Pretty cool. Let's do one or two more. We were 15 minutes late to stream, so I'll go for another 15 minutes. Numa? Yeah, let's do Numa. I don't know anything about Numa. Let's learn about Numa. Numa was the second king of Rome, and the object of Romulus having been to render his people and soldiers invincible in war, Numa, an old man and philosopher, made it his purpose to civilize them, and deeply to imbue them with the sentiments of religion. He appears to have imagined the thing best calculated to accomplish this purpose was to lead them by prodigies and persuasion of an intercourse into the invisible world. A shield fell from the heaven in this time, which he caused to be carefully kept and consecrated by the gods. And he conceived by no means so likely to be effectual to this end, as to make 11 other shields exactly like the one which had descended by a miracle, so that if an accident happened to any one, the Romans might believe that the one given to them by divinity was still in their possession. That's clever. That's clever. Numa gave to his people civil statutes and a code of observances in the matters of religion, but these were also enforced with a divine sanction. Numa met the goddess Egeria from time to time in a cave, and by her was instructed by the institutions he should give to the Romans and this barbarous people, awed by the venerable appearance of their king and the sanctity of his manners, and still more by the divine favor was so signally imparted to him, received his mandates with exemplary reverence, and ever after implicitly conformed themselves to all he had suggested. Interesting. So they're saying that, like, this guy received a divine shield from the heavens and, like, used that to convince the Romans to be like, hey, you should follow laws. And I guess divination in regards to divinity. Necromancy in this context means any magic. Yeah, like, I think so. From the Greeks, let us turn to the Romans. The earliest example of our purpose occurs in the Aeneid, and though Virgil is a poet, yet he is so correct a writer that we may well take for granted that he either records facts which had been handed down by tradition, or that, when he feigns things strikingly in accord with the manners and beliefs of the age in which he speaks. Okay. Didn't really need to say that, frankly. That's true of every guy. It's true of every guy that writes. I want to do the story of a Godwin. A story in the Arabian Nights which merits notice for its singularity as exhibiting a particular example of the credulity of the people of the East. Okay, relax, man. Is that of a man who married a sorceress without being in any way conscious of her character in that respect. She was sufficiently agreeable in her person and found for the most part no reason to be dissatisfied with her. But he became uneasy at the strangeness of her behavior. Whenever they sat together at meals, the husband provided a sufficient variety of dishes and was anxious that his wife should eat and be refreshed. But she took scarcely any nourishment. He set before her a plate of rice. From this plate she took somewhat, grain by grain, that she would waste no other, but she would taste of no other dish. The husband remonstrated her upon her way of eating, but to no purpose. She still went on the same. He knew it was impossible for anyone to subsist upon so little as she ate, and his curiosity was roused. One night, as he lay quietly awake, he perceived his wife rise very softly, put on her clothes. He watched, but made as if he saw nothing. Presently, she opened the door and went out. He followed her unperceived by moonlight, and tracked her into a place of graves. Here, to his astonishment, he saw her joined by a ghoul, a sort of wandering demon, which is known to infest ruinous buildings, and from time to time suddenly rushes out, seizes children and other defenseless people, strangles and devours them. Occasionally, for want of other food, this detested race will resort to churchyards, digging up the bodies of the newly buried, gorge their appetites on the flesh of these. The husband followed his wife and her supernatural companion and watched their proceedings. He saw them digging in a new-made grave. They extracted the body of the deceased, and the ghoul, cutting it up joint by joint, they feasted voraciously, and having satisfied their appetites, cast the remainder into the grave again, and covered it up as before. The husband now withdrew unobserved to his bed, and the wife followed presently after. He, however, conceived a terrible loathing of such a wife, and discovers that he is acquainted with her dreadful secret. They can no longer live together, and a metamorphosis followed. She turned him into a dog, which by ill usage she drove from her door, and he, aided by a benevolent sorceress, first recovers his natural shape, and then, having changed her into a mare, by perpetual hard usage and ill treatment, vents his detestation of the character he had discovered in her. Cool. I am curious about that Sweden one. Witchcraft in Sweden. This is true, by the way. Yep, turn him into a dog, which is the thing she could do. The story of witchcraft, as it is reported to have passed in Sweden in the year of 1670, and has many times been reprinted in this country, is on several accounts one of the most interesting and deplorable that has ever been recorded. The scene lies in Dalecarlia, a country forever memorable as having witnessed some of the earliest adventures of Gustavus Vasa, his deepest humiliation, and the commencement of his prosperous fortune. The Dalecarlians are represented to us as the simplest, the most faithful, the bravest of the sons of men, undebauched by the unsuspicious, who devoted themselves in the most disinterested manner for a cause that appeared to them worthy of support. The cause of liberty and independence against the cruelest of tyrants. At least such they were in 1520. 150 years before the date of the story we are going to recount, the site of these events was at Mahara and Elfdale, in the province that had just been mentioned. It's where the fucking elves live. The Dalecarlians, simple and ignorant, but of exemplary integrity and honesty, who dwelt amidst impracticable mountains and spacious mines of copper and iron, were distinguished for superstition among the countries of the north, were all superstitious, and were probably subject at intervals to the periodical visitations of alarm of witches, when whole races of men became wild, and the affection without anyone's being able to be account for it. In the year 1670, and one or two preceding years, there was a great alarm of witches in the town of Mahra. There were always 2 or 3 witches existing in some obscure quarters of the place, but now they increased in number and showed their faces with utmost audacity. The mode on present occasion was to make a journey through the air as to Blockula, an imaginary scene of retirement, which none but the witches and their dupes had ever seen. Here they met with feasts and various entertainments, which it seems had particular charms for the persons who partook in them. The witches used to go into a field in the environments of Mahra and cry aloud to the devil in a particular sort of recitation. Antecessor, come carry us to Blockula. Then appeared a multiple of strange beasts, men, spits, posts, and goats with spits run through their entrails and projecting behind them all might have room. The witches mounted these beasts of burden or vehicles and were conveyed through the air over high walls and mountains, through the churches and chimneys without perceptible impediment, till they arrived at the place of their destination. Here the devil feasted them with various compounds and confections. Having eaten to their heart's content, they danced and then fought. Sounds dope. The devil made them ride on spits from which they are thrown, and the devil beat them with the spits and laughed at them. He then caused them to build a house to protect them against the day of judgment, and presently overturned the walls of the house and derided them again. All sorts of obscenities were reported to follow upon these scenes. The devil begot on those witches' sons and daughters this new generation, intermarried again, and the issue of this further conjugation appears to have been toads and serpents. How all this pedigree proceeded for 2 years in which Blockula had ever been heard of, I know not that the witches were ever called on to explain. Was that guy bothering you? But what was the most of all to be deplored? The devil was not content with seducing these witches to go and celebrate his infernal Sabbath. He further insisted that they should bring the children of Mahra along with them, and that he was satisfied if each witch brought one, but now he demanded that each witch should bring 6 or 7 in her quota. How the witches managed with the minds of children are at a loss to guess. These poor, harmless innocents, steeped to the very lips in ignorance and superstition, were by some means kept in continual alarm by the wicked, or, to speak more truly, the insane old women. Interesting, so he believes that, insane old women were actually abducting children. And that their prompters said, it does not appear that the children were ever left their beds, and that the time they reported had ever been to Blockula. To Blockula. Their parents watched them with fearful anxiety. At a certain time of the night, the children were seized with a strange shuddering. Their limbs were agitated, their skins covered with profuse perspiration. When they came to themselves, they related that they had been to Blockula, and that strange things had been seen, similar to what had already been described by the women. 300 children of various ages were said to have seized by this epidemic. God damn. This reminds me a lot of the Satanic Panic. The whole town of Mahra became subject to the infection and were overcome with the deepest affliction. They consulted together and drew up a petition to the Royal Council at Stockholm, entreating that they would discover some remedy, that the government would impose its authority to put an end to the calamity which they could otherwise find no limit. The King of Sweden was at the time Charles XI, father of Charles XII, and was only 14 years of age. His council, in their wisdom, deputed 2 commissioners to Mahra, and furnished them with the powers to examine witnesses, and to take whatever proceedings they might judge necessary, and to put an end to the unspeakable calamity. Yeah, it seems like it might have been the inspiration for Carcosa. Hey, thank you for the subs! We did it! We got to 11! A special thing happened. A special cute thing happened. They entered on the business of their commission to the 13th of August. The ceremony having begun with 2 sermons in the great church of Mahra, which may have been sure the damnable sin of witchcraft was fully dilated on, and concluding with prayers to the Almighty God that in his mercy would speedily bring an end to the tremendous misfortune, with which their sins he had seen fit to afflict the poor people of Mahra. The next day they opened their commission. 70 witches were brought before them. They were all at first steadfast in their denial, alleging that the changes were wantonly brought against them, solely from malice and ill will, but the judges were earnest in pressing them, till at length the first one, and then another, burst into tears and confessed all. 23 were prevailed on thus to disburthen their consciousnesses, their consciences, but nearly the whole, as well those who owed the justice of their sentence, as those who protested their innocence to the last, were executed. 15 children confessed their guilt and were also executed. 36 other children, who we may infer did not confess, between the ages of 9 and 16, were condemned to run the gauntlet and to be whipped on their hands at the church door every Sunday for a year. 20 others were whipped on their hands for 3 Sundays. Goddamn. This is certainly a very deplorable scene, and is made the more so by the previous character which history has impressed upon us of the simplicity, integrity, and generous love of liberty of the Delacarlians. For the children and their parents, we can feel nothing but unmingled pity. The case of the witches is different. That 300 children should have been made the victims of this imaginary witchcraft, doubtless a grievous calamity, and that a number of women should have been found so depraved and barbarous by the incessant suggestions to have practiced on the minds of these children, so as to have robbed them of sober sense, to have frightened them into fits and disease, and made them believe the most odious impossibilities, argued a most degenerate character, and well-merited severe reprobation, but not death. Add to which, many of these women may be believed innocent. Otherwise, a great majority of those were executed and not have died, protesting their entire freedom from what was imputed to them. Most of the parents, no doubt, from folly and ill judgment, aided the alienation of mind of their children, which they afterwards so deeply deplored, and gratified their senseless aversion to the old women, when they were themselves in many cases the more real authors of the evil than those who suffered. God damn. Ugh. Oh my gosh. I think that's going to wrap it up for this evening. Thank you for joining me, ladies and gentlemen. That was a blast. I always enjoy reading with y'all. Thank you so much for the subs. That's really going to help me out this month. I really appreciate that. It makes me very happy that y'all keep showing up week after week. I woke up, I slept in a little bit, and I realized it was Friday, and it made me happy because I got to stream. So, thank you so much, everyone. I will catch you next week. We'll probably do more of this, honestly. All right. Thank you for the stream. Bye!